My name is S. Rob, and I'm going now to talk about horror mail. Don't worry, this isn't a mindless promotion for a film, because the film doesn't exist yet. So what I'm going to talk about is the process of making the film. Except at the present moment in time, what we're talking about is the before filming bit. The film Horror Mail will be an anthology film. That means it will be a film with many stories in it. And you may think that the place you'd start with this would be to write the stories or to get the stories. In actual fact, I've started with the framing idea. And that would be similar to if you were writing a book of spells, all the bit roundabout, the bit that connects them together. And it's a similar idea, okay? It's like you'll notice a lot of the old anthology films where you had many films, many stories in there that have a connecting idea. And there'd be like a video part which went around stories themselves, which connected them all together. Yeah, so they're not just a collection of stories, a collection of films. They are an overall film. And that's what Horror Mail is going to be. And the connecting idea is about letters, basically. It's about receiving letters. And that's a connecting idea. In many ways, I suppose I have an advantage over many of you in that I'm a professional author. However, I also have a disadvantage, and that is that I am a professional author, which means that I actually have to do write an awful lot every day to write the books that I do, okay? And they're mostly on the occult. In fact, they're practically all on the occult. At the moment, I'm finishing about 141st book. And that means that I've wrote more books on the occult than anyone else in the English language. So I have to write this stuff alongside doing that, writing the stories. There's also another limitation as well. I've decided to do this as a one-man film. Now, I know you're probably thinking this a bit odd, but there is one-man films, they do exist, okay? So it's going to be done as a one-man thing, which means what you'll have is these stories will be very much about the words as much as the visual, okay? And they will be told by images and possibly animations and things like that. So that will be what the stories are about, okay? They won't have a lot of people in it. But of course, this means that I haven't really thought about all the other aspects first, because writing a script isn't necessarily the same as writing a book. You know, you need to put things like camera angles and things like this in, which hasn't been done yet, okay? What I've done at the moment, I have the framing idea in some of the stories. And I intend this to be, you know, film length. The length of, you know, a standard film that you'd watch. Now, like I said, being a writer does help. Because, you know, this will all be wrote by me. Okay, that's the intention. That I will write all the stories in here. And it also gives me something different to do. And it allows people to see, you know, another anthology film. Because I like them, and I'm sure there's other people who are fans of them too. And also, I don't have the problem that other people will have about worrying about whether they can write to a high enough standard. Because I'm already a professional, so obviously I can write to a high enough standard. What I also have to do, though, is I have to make sure that things like filming is okay, or is of a high quality in sound. But this isn't something I'm dealing with now. This isn't something I'm thinking too much at the moment. And of course, the films have to fit into a certain length, okay? So there's an anthology, so there's a required number. The number in my head is probably about 4 stories, okay? And I've completed 2 of them, and I'm still working on the 3rd. Okay, but like I said, I have a lot of other writing to do, and I haven't set a deadline for this, okay? And this is supposed to be the intended name of the film, will be Horror Mail, okay? Which in some ways is not a good idea to tell you first, in case someone decides to use the name, but you know, it could change if I had to. You know, but that's basically what it's about, and I'm going to try to finish it before the end of the year, okay? And it's 2016. So hopefully I'll finish before then. Although I don't know how long it takes for people to see these things or get out there, as it were. Although I do think it'll be online distribution. Because, you know, it seems to be the easiest way. And that's where people watch things anyway. I think there's a lot of people like me out there that really we don't watch TV anymore. We'll watch things on the internet. You know, we just plug the computer in. But like I said, as well, I've also got to, once I've wrote the stories, I've got to decide on the order. Okay, so it doesn't mean because I write them in a particular order, they have to be done in that order, because they don't. You know, it's not about that. They don't have to be done in the same order that they are written in. It doesn't have to happen like that. And I also need to pick stories that resonate with people as well, that people will get into and they'll like. But also, another thing as well, which is an important point, is, and you know, you need the stories to start fairly quickly, because I don't have very long for each story. In actual fact, the word count you need for a film is very short. Okay, the reason it'll probably take me a while to write it is because I write so much other stuff which I have to write. So, you know, I've got less time, as it were, less words to play with than maybe you would. Although I am more practiced in writing. Another thing as well is the style and genre, okay? But part of what I like about anthology film, about anthology horror, is that you can mix things up a lot, okay? You know, you can mix the sort of styles up to an extent. Although obviously it's all written by one guy, me, so it's going to have some sort of similar style, because it's wrote by the same person. And that's part of it as well. Also, it'll allow, you know, more one-man films, because I know you get a lot of people out there, and, you know, they complain, they think we don't have enough people and we'll have trouble getting people and funding. But if we can start to do this as one person, then it becomes much easier, which is what I'm going to try to do. I don't know if there'll be other people who will do that, but, you know, I've always liked anthology films. But also as well, I have to think about things like characterisation and stuff like this, because these are so brief, you won't necessarily get that much time to tell that in. But there is one thing I'll tell you about writing stories, or writing generally, and that is that people will always tell you they have to be done a very specific way, and they'll tell you what you have to do in what position and when, and that's not really the way to write things, okay? The way they tell you to write things isn't really always the way. It's not always your way. You know, people tell you have to do this and this has to happen then. Real writing isn't like that, okay? You learn it by writing it, although I do write mostly non-fiction. You know, I have wrote a small amount of fiction before. So this is something of a departure to me, but it also allows people to see that I can write that other side of things, yeah? Because when you write on the occult, even when you write other things, it tends to get eclipsed by what you write. Or it could just be the amount of occult that I've written that does that. But this will also be a different project because there isn't many people. And that means, yes, I'll still do storyboards and things like that. But at the same extent, there's only me. There's only one person. So in some ways, it's like when you write a book, you know. The first book you write, you need to plan it out. When you get your 140th book, you plan it out, but you realise you carry a lot in your head, or at least I do. And I suppose that'll be the way that I'll do that. But like I said, the first thing I have to work on is a script. But being an anthology film, you sort of do more than one thing at once. Normally you write your script, you start at the start, you finish at the end, and then you rewrite any bits that you need to. And you put things that would be directions and actions within it. But of course the way I'm doing it here, is that I've got the framing idea. But I've also got some of that which I need to work out, which I'll do at different points. And then I'm writing the stories. And then I would decide what order they're going to be in. But once I've got that and the framing, it's still not done. Because not just does it need to be filmed, to also work out what images and animations that I'm going to use in each story and what style they're going to be. Remember, this is a one-man project. So I need pictures that need to be taken, I need to take them. And that's probably going to take up most of the time, okay? It's simply taking all the different pictures and things like this. So, although I'm telling you about Horrormail, it isn't made yet. This is the before part. Sorry about that, I was annoyed some guys just driven past. Which shows another problem with filming, and that is that people tend to make noises. And you can't always film in completely quiet places. In fact, I'm not going to edit that out and start again, because it shows that this is another problem. People who aren't involved in the filming. And when you're only one person, you're filming something, people are less likely to cooperate than if you're many people. Okay, they're not going to cooperate with one person. Hell, when you're an author, people won't always cooperate with you. You'll find that that it can be more difficult, say, to get publicity, even for a professional like me, than it would be, say, for someone who's got a book written with many things written by many people, like say an anthology book, where you've got like 20, 30 different authors, you know, which is something I know surprises many of you. But like I said, it'll also have to time out the length. That's another thing as well. Talking speed. Because we all talk at different speeds. So I have to make sure that I'm talking at a reasonable speed, but not too fast. and you've got to make sure the levels will be the same. But like I said, a lot of this point is the actual script itself. And I suppose the style I'll be going for won't be like some anthology films where they're trying to make it so you can't spot the gap between the story and the framing. Okay, I'm not trying to do that, because I actually like the old style ones where you can spot the difference, you know, where they've got, you know, like a guy like in the Hammer Horror ones is a guy doing tarot card readings and then you got the story. I quite like that, you know. Or like the old sort of ones on television where Tales from the Crypt and the Dark Side and stuff like that. You know, I quite like it when there's an obvious difference between the stories and the framing, okay. So that's going to be a feature. It's not going to try to blend in, because the entire point is that it's the letters that people are receiving, so then that I've received, and then you'll get the story there, which is how that will work. Okay. What you can also do if you want to support this, and there's a site called Patreon, and you can then support this video making. But I understand that many people won't do that. But I'm hoping that it gives you some insight into this first stage. Okay. And I haven't lied to you about the way that you write things. You know, the actual fact, people don't always use the same structure. There is decisions you'll have to make in how you want to do things. And that's an important point as well. I'm not lying here and telling you have to write things a certain way, but also you can look on it and say, so that's how it's done. And this first stage, hopefully, it will help get some people interested. So when Horrormail, which will be all one word, is released and is made, that hopefully it will have a good audience.